Tarte Tatin, you want to take your apples and peel them thoroughly. For this size Tarte Tatin, we want to use about 8 golden delicious apples. You can use different varieties in this case, but make sure they are a variety that's going to hold together when cooked on the stovetop and baked. You do not want these falling apart and creating an applesauce. Golden delicious work really well. So we're going to peel the apples, about 8 of them for a 9-inch tart. After all of your apples are peeled, you want to cut each one in half and use a melon baller to core out the center of the apple. Then you also want to remove the top and the bottom of that core and place it in a bowl. The next step is to zest some of your lemon right into the bowl of apples. So I'm using a microplane tool here to zest the lemons. This gives us a wonderful flavor and all of those beautiful essential oils. Once the lemon is zested, cut it in half and go ahead and juice it and extract as much of that lemon juice as possible right over all of your apples. This will help with the acidity and allow it not to brown as easily. Once that's added, we're going to take our first amount of sugar and sprinkle it over the apples. This acts almost like salt, where salt extracts the moisture from vegetables. We're going to do the same thing using sugar. So we want to make sure these are tossed really well, and we're going to set them aside for about 20 minutes to help really release the juices from the apples. The next step is to start the caramel for the Tarte Tatin. So we're going to take our 9-inch saucepan and add the butter, slowly melting it until it's completely dissolved. Once the butter starts to melt, make sure you are keeping it over a medium heat, not too high and not too low. You're going to start to add in the remaining sugar. Sprinkle it gently over the melted butter and stir constantly. It will seem really chunky at first, but you will have an even, smooth caramel that will form later on in the process. That the butter and the sugar don't seem to want to come together very well in the beginning. That's okay, don't worry about it, and just keep cooking. And as it keeps cooking, the sugar will start to brown inside of this mixture. So you will notice a change in the coloration. This is the color that you're looking for, a nice golden caramel color. We're ready to add the apples now, but you can see how much liquid has been extracted from that sugar solution. So we want to make sure that we don't add that into our caramel. You're going to very gently, with the heat off at this point, add your apples one by one into the pan, and eventually you're going to have them spooning each other. So you're going to tuck them in nice and tight. The very beginning is a little tricky to get it to stand up, but once you get a few in there, it should work no problem. So just be patient with this process. Don't forget to have the heat off at this point, so it gives you enough time to be able to arrange the apples properly without overcooking the caramel and worrying about hurting yourself. It's very important to take your time and make sure the arrangement of the apples is in a very attractive manner. Once all of your apples are arranged in the pan, you want to make sure that nothing is stuck to the bottom. So you want to give it a good twist, and now you are able to turn it back on to start cooking the apples in the caramel. After a few minutes, you'll notice that they'll start to boil. You want to be able to baste this extra sauce over the apples. And in order to do that, you might have to remove a couple of the apples so that they are not in your way. Grab a large spoon and start scooping that caramel over the top. If it's still too hard, wait a few minutes and allow more of the juice to be extracted from the apples, and then go ahead and give it a baste. Do this every couple of minutes. When your caramel mixture is nice and boiling, you want to now turn the apples to the other side so that they cook evenly on both edges. So you can see that I am actually turning them one by one very gently so that now the other side that was up is now inside of the caramel. Do that for every apple all the way around the pan. Continue to baste the apples every few minutes until you feel like they are nice and tender but still holding their shape on both sides of the apple. Don't forget that the design that you form that you see on the top will eventually become the bottom of your Tarte Tatin. So keep the arrangement nice and clean the entire time. When your apples are starting to look nice and tender and even, you're going to want to go ahead and put a cover on it. Once you have waited the 7 minutes, go ahead and remove the cover and give the pan a good twist to make sure that all of your apples are mobile and not stuck to the pan. Give it another basting just to make sure that all of your apples are hydrated and full of that beautiful caramel. Once the apples feel like they're tender enough, we're going to now remove that excess liquid. These apples specifically had a lot of liquid that was removed from them, and if we try and bake this off and invert this tart, it'd probably be very runny. And I want this to be a thicker caramel that holds all the apples together. So what I want to do is remove as much as possible and go ahead and reduce it in a separate pan. So I've set aside the Tarte Tatin in the other pan with the heat off. While your juices are reducing, find something in your kitchen that you can use that is the shape of the top of the pan that you need to cut your cold puff pastry sheet with. So this is a perfect size, and I'm going to use this and place it right onto a sheet pan and keep it in the refrigerator until I'm ready to use it. Now our caramel is reducing. Please be careful not to go too far, otherwise you will burn the caramel and it won't do the job in the Tarte Tatin. We want it to have a syrupy consistency that, again, is not too runny and not too thick. So this might take a little practice to get just right. So once this is done, we're going to pour it back over the apples in the pan, and then this is ready to almost be baked in the oven. We're going to let this cool just slightly before we put the puff pastry on top. Let your Tarte Tatin cool slightly on the stove without the heat, and then remove your cold piece of puff pastry and place it right over the apples. Make sure that it fits right into the grooves of the pan between the pan and the apples. And then you're going to cut some venting holes in top. Take just a paring knife and cut 4 vents so that the steam can escape with no problem. Your pastry is now ready to go in a 425-degree oven. I am placing it on a sheet pan with parchment paper just in case anything wants to bubble over. It will be much easier cleanup, and it's easier to remove from the oven as well. Once it's done, it takes about 20-25 minutes. It should look nice and brown and the puff pastry should puff. You can go ahead and remove it from the oven. Let your pastry cool about 20 minutes before you decide to invert it onto whatever platter, and be confident. Flip it over, holding one hand on the pan and one hand on the platter, and it should remove just beautifully. Serve your Tarte Tatin with either ice cream or vanilla whipped cream and enjoy.